The evening sky lost its light as a thick fog crept in from the outskirts of the small town, swallowing every familiar silhouette. Emily stepped onto her porch, the air heavy with an oppressive silence that made her skin prickle. The fog enveloped her in an otherworldly embrace, blurring the edges of her yard, transforming her once cozy surroundings into a labyrinth of shadows. As she took a hesitant step forward, she felt a strange pull, an invisible thread tugging her deeper into the dense, swirling gray. Each breath was accompanied by a whisper, an indistinct murmur that danced just beyond her comprehension. With each step, the world around her faded into a bleak monochrome, and she began to sense the presence of something waiting just out of sight, observing her with a relentless hunger. As panic began to rise within her, she recalled a childhood tale about a figure that prowled through the fog, luring lost souls with promises of companionship, only to ensnare them forever. Emily shook her head, dismissing the stories as mere folklore, yet a cold sweat trickled down her spine, coaxing her to retreat. Suddenly, silhouettes emerged in the distance, indistinct forms that seemed to drift through the fog, flickering like candle flames in the wind. They hovered just at the edge of her vision, teasing her with glimpses of familiar faces, friends and family she had long been separated from. Each apparition beckoned her closer, their voices a siren call that melded with her memories, twisting affection into despair. The longer she remained, the more vivid their features became, their longing expressions urging her to join them in the murky depths of the fog. Just as terror began to grip her, Emily recalled her own reflection in a window, a reminder of the warmth of reality waiting for her back home. Gathering her strength, she turned away from the dancers in the mist, each step dragging against the unseen weight of their hopes and desires. The fog whispered her name, growing more insistently as she fought against its grasp. But with her heart pounding, she raced back to the safety of her porch, desperate to escape the allure of their eternal twilight. In the end, the fog receded, leaving behind a haunting silence, with Emily forever marked by the promises it made and the faces she could never reach. In the dim light of her attic, Clara discovered an old doll, its porcelain face cracked and eyes an unsettling shade of blue, as if they could see into the depths of one's soul. She felt an instant connection to it, a strange sense of familiarity, as she brushed away the dust that had settled on its dress. The moment she brought it downstairs, the atmosphere in the house shifted, an undercurrent of tension filling the air, unsettling her in a way she couldn't quite understand. The doll seemed to radiate an energy, a silent whisper beckoning her to come closer, to know it more intimately. As days turned into nights, Clara found herself drawn to the doll, often sitting in her room, talking to it like an old friend. The shadows in the corners of her room deepened, and whispers began to fill her mind. Yet they were not words she could decipher. They were urges, compelling her to forget the world outside. Her thoughts became tangled with the doll, its presence overshadowing her reality. Friends noticed her growing detachment, their concerns met with shrugs, as Clara became more entwined in the doll's enigmatic nature. One evening, as a storm raged outside, Clara awoke to find the doll in a different position, its head tilted slightly, as if it were observing her. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and intrigue. She scolded herself for being superstitious, yet unease gnawed at her. Each night brought more changes, the doll's expressions shifting subtly, reflecting emotions Clara felt, but dared not articulate. It was as though the doll was becoming an extension of her own psyche, revealing her darkest fears and desires that lay buried deep within. Driven to the edge of madness, Clara decided to confront the doll, demanding to know what it wanted. Silence filled the room, and for a moment, she felt a wave of clarity wash over her, a connection so profound it felt like a revelation. Just then, the doll's lips curled into a faint smile, and something deep within Clara broke. The whispers grew louder, drowning out her thoughts, and in her mind, she could finally hear the truth. It was not the doll that was haunted. It was her. Her secrets, her regrets, her past, all manifested into this inanimate figure, binding them forever in an unholy pact. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves as Clara stumbled upon the old crypt hidden beneath a gnarled oak tree. Its entrance was a half-collapsed stone archway, swallowed by creeping ivy and neglect. Curiosity tugged at her, a whisper in her mind urging her to step closer. The village had long warned of the crypt, a place not meant for the living, but she dismissed their fears as mere superstition. Each rustle of the trees seemed to amplify her heartbeat, a reminder of the stories she had heard, yet they only fueled her resolve. As she entered, darkness enveloped her like a heavy shroud. The flickering light of her flashlight revealed crumbling walls adorned with faded inscriptions, words of sorrow etched by hands long forgotten. Clara could feel the weight of the past pressing upon her, a palpable tension that called her deeper into the crypt's belly. Shadows danced along the stone, twisting into shapes that seemed to breathe, and for a moment she thought she heard whispers, hushed and distant, echoing her name. The chilling sensation, akin to fingers trailing down her spine, intensified her unease, yet she pressed on, drawn by an inexplicable force. At the heart of the crypt, she discovered a sarcophagus, its surface intricately carved with images of life and death, a testament to the soul it contained. The air grew colder, and Clara's breath formed delicate clouds around her. It was there, in the flickering beam of her light, that she saw her reflection in the polished stone. But it was not quite right. The eyes staring back at her glimmered with a darkness that was not her own, a void filled with secrets and despair. She shuddered, realizing that the crypt was more than a mere tomb. It was a mirror, reflecting the fears she had buried deep within herself, fears of isolation, insignificance, and the inevitability of death. Panic surged through her, urging her to flee, but the crypt seemed to shift, its walls closing in like a tightening grip. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices intertwining with her thoughts, blurring the line between reality and madness. Clara fought to drown them out, yet their words sank into her mind, cutting deeper than any blade. She realized then that the crypt was not just a resting place for the dead, but a repository of every troubled soul that had dared to enter. It was claiming her, feeding on her fears, and as the darkness swallowed her whole, she understood that to escape, she must confront not just the crypt, but the very essence of her being. In a small, unassuming town, a woman named Clara had always felt like an outsider. She lived alone in a crumbling Victorian house, its walls thick with secrets, where the whispers of the past echoed through the empty rooms. While the townsfolk celebrated life and laughter, Clara sought solace in the shadows, turning to books and old photographs. Yet as night descended, an indescribable presence unfurled its tendrils around her, darkening her thoughts and amplifying her insecurities, leading her to question if she had ever truly belonged. One evening, after losing herself in pages of forgotten history, Clara noticed a peculiar fog creeping through her window, curling around her like a lover's embrace. Within the mist, a figure emerged, its features indistinct yet hauntingly familiar. It felt like a reflection of her own sorrow, a specter that whispered truths she had long buried, her failures, her loneliness, her longing for connection. Each word seemed to dredge up memories she had fought to forget, each syllable a reminder of the life she had chosen to shun. The apparition revealed the depths of her psyche, laying bare the fears she'd buried beneath layers of denial. As nights turned into weeks, Clara found herself drawn into a dance with the specter, their connection growing more intimate and invasive. She began to mirror its actions, staying awake until dawn, her mind unraveling as she listened to its soft murmurs. It urged her to confront the townsfolk, to unearth the resentment she felt for their joy, leaving her with a gnawing sense of urgency to reclaim her lost identity. Yet every encounter left her feeling more frayed, her sanity slipping like the grains of sand through her fingers as she struggled to discern where the specter ended and she began. In a final confrontation, Clara stood in the center of her living room, surrounded by shadows and the suffocating echo of her own despair. She called out to the specter, demanding to know the truth of its existence. The fog swirled violently, swirling like a violent storm, revealing fractured images of her life that melded into one overwhelming truth. The specter was a manifestation of her repressed desires, a reflection of the woman she desperately wished to be. In that moment of clarity, she understood that the only way to banish the specter was to embrace her pain and vulnerability, to step into the light she had long denied. But that realization came too late. Now, she was irrevocably entangled, forever haunted by the specter of her own making.